All right, folks. I just wanted to make a video here to show some thoughts on the best ways to make the most profitable airline in Airline Manager Tycoon. So basically 5 tips for you. So tip number 1, what kind of routes do you run? And I think it's pretty simple here. You want to only run routes that can go for 24 hours. 24-hour round trip. And here's why. When you go farther, you make more revenue the farther you fly. And 2, the demand for each city resets every 24 hours, every day. So you want to be able to fly that route at least once a day. And moreover, you want to take up all the demand for that route every day, each day. So if you have a plane that can make the trip in 24 hours, then if it's a big enough plane, you can take all the demand in one trip, fly back to the hub, and then by the time you return, it'll be the next day and you fly the next trip. And so you do that 7 times a week, and obviously you're taking up all the demand that you can for that week. If the route is longer than 24 hours, then it starts screwing things up. So let's just say it's a 25-hour route. Well, then one plane can only fly that route 6 times in a week. And if you want to fill that last 7th day, you're going to have to get another plane. And it just makes your scheduling a nightmare. A little bit less than 24 hours is okay. But if it's much less than 24 hours, you're going to have a plane that's kind of sitting around, not doing anything for a couple hours each week. And you might have to add another route to that plane. So I would suggest trying to find routes that are 24 hours long. And it just makes everything easier in terms of scheduling and managing your airline. So just to show you a little bit what's going on in my network here, I'm going to open up my network management, and I have been running this for just a couple weeks, and I'm flying from LAX, and you can see that all these routes, almost all of my routes except for Las Vegas here, are about a little under 10,000 kilometers, which is about how far some of the long-haul aircraft can do a trip in 24 hours. So, for example, you see here at the top of the list, it's LAX CJU, which is an airport in South Korea, and that route is running about $3.6 million of profit every day, which is pretty good. And it's also running about $5 million in revenue. So point number 2, these long routes, if you can, you want to run the A380, and it's just a simple point. I mean, you know, the more seats you could fit into a plane, the more money you're going to make per flight. So all my planes are A380s. I'll show you my aircraft list here. You know, I have a really simple naming convention for them, but you can see here that my aircraft are all making quite a bit of money. My oldest aircraft that I purchased, once I had the ability to purchase A380s, has already paid for itself after a couple of weeks. Let's see here. It's 4 months old in game time, which is like 2 weeks old in real life time. I'm playing on Express. The third tip for you is you want to maximize your prices in order to optimize each flight. So what I mean by that is they kind of talk about this in like the help materials, but I don't know it's very clear the way they do it. But if you look at my routes here, see on the right here that all those demand numbers are very close to 0. And every time I buy a route, every time I do a new R&D for comfort or security or whatever, I always come back to the network management and try to re-optimize my prices. And you want to get that demand pretty close to 0 if you can, because that's going to give you the best revenue per seat possible. So you raise your prices as high as possible to get to 0 demand. I recommend not going into negative demand on passenger seats, because usually that incremental dollar is going to take away, you know, losing that one extra passenger is not going to be made up but for by the ticket, you know, the extra dollar on the tickets that you do sell. So get it to 0 demand. On cargo, it's a little bit different story, especially, I'm still pretty early in the game here and I haven't gotten all the cargo R&D yet, but you kind of have to play around with it and figure out what's going to maximize your revenue on the cargo side. Tip 4 is, as we talked about, R&D. Again, I think the in-game materials and help section are not very helpful in terms of explaining how this works. But a quick pointer on like how to figure out a little more about how services work. Go to your R&D button and click services, and you see these question marks here on entertainment, punctuality, and everything. Those are little tip boxes that are a little bit hidden. They actually tell you how these attributes impact your airline. So entertainment, for example, it'll tell us entertainment is very appreciated during long journeys. Well, guess what? We're running 24-hour routes, or 12 hours each way. That's pretty long, and we want our customers to be happy about that. So I've been focusing a lot of my R&D on entertainment. And I have noticed that when I put money into R&D, my demand numbers go up pretty significantly for those long haul routes. So those are the top 4 tips. Tip number 5 is if you're paying attention to this stuff, what you want to be thinking about is how much structural profit are you getting for every dollar that you're investing in your airline. So I call this asset efficiency. So the way I think about it is, if I spend $100 million on either paying down a loan or $100 million buying a new airplane or buying a new hub or new route, how much incremental structural profit can I get out of that? And if you're doing that math all the time, then you start basically being able to understand what your opportunity cost of your money is, and you want to be putting your money where you're going to get the most structural profit per dollar that you invest, right? And that's how you're going to grow your airline the fastest of anyone out there. So just as an example, if we look at my network, and you can see like each one of these routes, I can even sort by most profitable routes. But my most profitable route is going to put out almost $3.6 million of profit every day. But you got to think about to get that route going. You got to buy the plane. So the A380 is $403 million, and depending where you are in the game, you may have to spend upwards of $100 million or more to buy a new route. So really, you're talking about a $500 million investment to get no more than $3.6 million in structural profit improvement. And don't forget, you're going to get deducted for maintenance or taxes or whatever they get counted against your structural profit. So you got to think about that when you're making capital decisions. And if you got a bunch of different choices, you have to balance opening a new route against, say, maybe paying off a loan. So like if you have a really high cost loan that has, say, $50 million of balance on it, but you're paying $5 million a week to repay that loan. Well, that's a heck of a lot better investment to pay down that loan for the $50 million and pick up basically $5 million of, 5 million divided by 7 of structural profit than a lot of your other options might be. But you have to go and do the math every time you make that decision. And if you're doing a good job of it, you should be able to be very, very efficient in terms of the profit you're putting out. So, as I said, I've been running this airline for a couple of weeks, and we're up to a structural profit of $35 million. But my airline value, which is basically how much money I've invested in the airline so far, is under $3 billion. And if you were to compare that to the ranking tables right now, let's open up the ranking tables here. Most of these other players out there, they're spending a lot more money to get the same amount of structural profit. So here you can see it says I've invested, call it 2.8 billion, but the players who are around me are like 11 billion, 7 billion, 4 billion. Almost no one is as low as I am. So you want to be thinking about these things, because over the long run, if you're really trying to build the most profitable airline and you want to climb up the league tables, well, you got to think about these things. So hope you enjoyed these tips. Feel free to leave comments and ask questions in the comment section below.